Hello there. Welcome in to a Friday edition of the show. I'm back. Was out yesterday, making up for lost time. Not with the show. We only got 90 minutes. But then right after that, we'll head seamlessly into the Switchbacks and Lexington here on Extra Sports 1300. Roland Vargas will be joining me for the call of that one coming up at starting at 4:30 kickoff after 5 o'clock. So let's not waste any more time. If you want to get in on the show with your thoughts on the day's topics, please feel free to do so. 719-247-1313. You will also be able to use that number to win Switchbacks tickets for tonight. Although if you I could probably put in a call if you can make it to Kentucky in the next couple of hours. If you can make it to Kentucky in the next couple of hours, I will make sure that you have tickets to the Switchbacks match. Let's put it that way. But tickets to the next Switchbacks home match, which is on Wednesday, and then, of course, U.S. Senior Open tickets will be given away on this show as well. Let's start with the hoops. Once I saw the video of Pascal Siakam in the pregame team huddle looking like the Undertaker when he takes his hat off when he gets in the ring and all you could see are the whites of his eyes. That's how Pascal Siakam looked. And I knew when I saw that we were going to get a Game 7. But it would have been nice for OKC to at least show up. I don't know. Maybe they saw the video of Pascal Siakam and thought he was possessed by a demon and were like, we don't want any part of that. Just go do your thing. We'll regroup for Sunday. It was 108-91, but it wasn't even that close. The Pacers were up by 30 at one point. And I get the inclination from people to say that the Oklahoma City Thunder are playing with a little bit of fire here, right? You have a chance to close out the series. You should just close out the series. Now, a little disrespectful to the Pacers, but we've been that way the whole time with Indiana, so that's not really the thing. I understand there are moments, LeBron's block on Iguodala in 2016, Celtics not finishing off Kobe and Pau Gasol in 2010, even dating back to James Worthy's Game 7 triple-double for the Lakers in 88. Like, there have been some significant moments, and that's just in the finals. All right, Patrick Ewing's finger roll. Like, there are certainly moments that stick in your head that go, I remember a team that failed to close it out Game 6 thinking, oh, we got Game 7 at home, and then they lose. It's happened before. And those are the moments that stick out to us. Why we retain those? Well, history will tell you that teams that win Game 6 to force a Game 7 in the NBA playoffs win less than a third of the time in that Game 7. In the NBA Finals, the winning percentage is less than a quarter. So history will tell you that the Thunder certainly did not ruin their chances of winning a title by losing last night. This idea that momentum exists from one game to the next, it just doesn't. Game 7 is a completely different game, and it's a completely different game that is going to be played in Oklahoma City. Right? We went through it with the Nuggets. How are you feeling about after the Julian Strother game? That series went back to OKC, and the Nuggets absolutely got curb stomped. Now, history will also tell you that Sunday is going to be pretty epic because those games I mentioned, LeBron with the block on Iguodala, the Lakers beating the Celtics in 2010, James Worthy when he had a triple-double in 88, they needed every bit of that triple-double. All of those game sevens were great game sevens. They were all close. And there are a lot of game sevens that are pretty epic, and I would expect Sunday to be a great basketball game. But I would favor the Oklahoma City Thunder. But there's a reason why the Thunder were not desperate last night. Right? And there's a reason why teams in a game 6 closeout situation aren't always as desperate as you would like them to be. They do have game 7 at home. But I will say that it's not a good look from a team that was getting ready to enter the pantheon of the most dominant teams we have ever witnessed in a single NBA season. Right? So that's the other part of this here is that I don't know that even if the Thunder win on Sunday and even if they blow out the Pacers, when we inevitably have the historical discussions whether Oklahoma City is going to factor in. This will be their second game 7. The dominance that they had during the regular season is exactly that, regular season dominance. The Nuggets pushed them to 7 games, an incredibly flawed Nuggets team, mind you. And they have been pushed to a game 7 again by the Pacers. They're not going to deserve to be discussed with a Kobe and Shaq Lakers team, a Miami Heat team with the Heatles, Durant on the Golden State Warriors, like Jordan Bulls, and some of the numbers, margin of victory, number of wins, things like that will make the case that we're watching one of the most dominant teams ever. But you also have to consider the era. And this is not something I've been on. This is something that I have recently arrived at with the fact that this series keeps going back and forth. Because I was ready to have those big historical conversations about the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the more I think about it, it's like they're not those teams. And the reason is quite obvious right off the top, or at least one reason. They're not a super team. They're not a super team. It's a different era. I'm not saying that this era is watered down, but the talent is more spread out. And this is not one's better than the other in terms of what you would prefer. You can decide that on your own, whether you prefer super teams or not. I think the general consensus is no, we don't want super teams. But those super teams were dominant. Even going back to the Nuggets, which I think in many ways that Nuggets team, the way they played, how they were built, were very much the remnants of the super team era. And what I mean by that is they were so reliant on 2 players. Think about that run where the Denver Nuggets were much, and by the way, the Nuggets, when they won a title, were more dominant in their playoff run than the Thunder were or have been. Look at their margins of victory. Look at the fact that that Nuggets team was never really in a spot where you worried if they were going to get eliminated. It was quite comfortable for them. But the way they played, it was Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic in a two-man game for like 40 minutes. They played, kind of the same way that some of these super teams played, where it was just like, we have X number of stars, everything goes through them all the time. Pacers and Thunder don't play that way. Yeah, they each have their stars in Halliburton and SGA, but they play through everybody. That's the beauty of these two teams, is their depth, is the fact that they get everybody involved, that there are so many players that have a hand in their success on a nightly basis. Again, it's different. But the Thunder have been pushed now to a Game 7 twice. And even you look at their margin of victory, and it doesn't even hold a candle to some of these other championship teams. So I'm just getting ahead of the inevitable national programming. This Thunder team is not one of the most dominant we've ever seen. They're not more dominant than some of the Warriors teams, some of the Bulls teams, Lakers. And again, even the Denver Nuggets were more dominant in their playoff run than OKC is. This era is so different, and it's going to continue to be with the financial restrictions, that really you're going to have to look at, like, from now on and judge it. We always talk about how difficult it is to compare eras. This is going to be one of those things where we're going to look at OKC. I mean, you just forget any of the numbers I just threw out. Like, just look at them. Would you take them to beat the Durant Warriors? Any one of Kobe and Shaq's Lakers teams? Would you take this OKC team to even beat the Heat of LeBron, Bosh, and Wade? I don't think that I would. Some of the numbers will say they deserve to be in that conversation, but just watch them and look at this playoff run. They're not more dominant than those teams. But they could very well be the best. And they could be dominant in many ways on their way to a title. It just, historically, I don't think that they're going to hold up. I think they're going to join. I mean, it's much more fair to judge them based on the teams of the last 6 years prior and the teams moving forward, right? All these one and dones that we have cycled through. That's where the real conversation lies, and I think OKC is pretty high up on that list. But here's the other part with OKC. And kind of the same reason why this series is going to a Game 7, and the same reason why I don't think you're going to put this OKC team up against some of the other NBA teams of the past that you would consider dominant, is also the reason, is also a sign of, I don't want to say hope, but positivity about the future of the Thunder. They could be just getting started. Like that's kind of my bigger takeaway here from the Oklahoma City Thunder, regardless of what happens on Sunday. We'll see if the financial rules get to them, right? That's always the caveat here. But if they stay together, we haven't seen the best version of OKC. Outside of SGA, Caruso, and Hartenstein, every one of these Thunder players you can expect probably to be better next year. Even look at Jalen Williams. A lot of these guys are role players. Like everyone wants to quickly make Jalen Williams a star. He's not a star. He was an all-star because he had a very good single season. He's not a star. SGA's a star. Pascal Siakam has been doing things for longer than Jalen Williams. Look at Chet Holmgren. We all know Chet Holmgren, so we make him a star. Look how dependent he is on home court. Lou Dort. Both of these teams are built heavily on role players. They depend on role players. And role players are very susceptible to swings between when they're playing at home and when they're on the road. So it's part of the reason why we're getting to a Game 7, because home court has meant a lot. And it's also why you're not going to put this OKC team against some of those others, because SGA is the biggest star of this series. And he's only really been a star for 2 years. And it's also the youth and relative inexperience of these two basketball teams. OKC last night showed that they don't quite have that ultimate killer instinct. But they may win a title, and they'll be better for this run regardless of what happens on Sunday. Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, like these players are going to be better moving forward. So if it sounds like I'm putting down OKC, hear what I'm saying right now. That this is not the best version of the Oklahoma City Thunder that we're seeing. And they might win a championship. It's still early, and we're so quick to like microwave these things. And that's, I think, why we started to have the conversation about how historically great OKC was, because we're used to that in the NBA. It's a different time, and this is a young team. A very young team still. Young coach. So I think the more compelling question moving forward is whether OKC can actually create a dynasty based on the financial restrictions that exist in terms of their development and how much better these players on the roster can be. I think they have everything in place to become a dynasty. It's just, when are these players going to be paid? And can OKC afford to pay them all? But next year's Thunder could be better than this year's. And we'll see if this beginning of the OKC Thunder results in the title on Sunday. I'm just happy we're getting Game 7. I would have liked a more compelling Game 6. I would have liked more compelling basketball. I flipped from the NBA Finals to Caitlin Clark, and she was terrible last night. So I'm flipping back and forth. I'm like, I don't have Caitlin Clark being Caitlin Clark, and I have a terrible NBA Finals game. But happy that we get Game 7. Because Game 7s are great. And credit to Indiana. Right? Let's not forget that. We thought this thing was going to be over quickly, and it wasn't even going to be that close. And here's Indiana with one game. I don't think they'll win that one game, but their mindset is, hey, we just got to win this one. And we're NBA champions. Regardless of how it ends for Indiana, they get all the credit in the world because no one expected them to be here. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, why one of the best years of recent NHL memory is going to continue to be really good through this offseason. The 45th U.S. Senior Open returns to the Broadmoor next week. Get your tickets to see the legends of the game compete June 26th through the 29th at ussenioropen.com, and your chance to win tickets to the U.S. Senior Open coming up in just a little bit. The TV ratings are out for the Stanley Cup final. And the story is not good. They are down, and they did not outdraw the Four Nations. Now, I think it's somewhat unfair to compare the Stanley Cup final to the Four Nations, because the Four Nations gives us something that let's call it 2 years between the Summer and the Winter Olympics, gives us something that is in many ways the highest form of sports competition, which is country versus country. And it wasn't a novel concept because we have the Olympics, but given the part of the calendar it was in, that it wasn't actually the Olympics. It was kind of a novel concept from Gary Bettman and company. So I think it's somewhat unfair. And also, What channel was it on? That's the other part of this. Like Four Nations was carried by ESPN. Stanley Cup final was on TNT, a cable channel. And I know ESPN's cable, but ESPN is the type of cable channel that everybody has. So I think it's a little bit of an unfair comparison because really, if we're looking at it, like the NBA Finals is not drawing. So apparently we just don't care anymore about champions being crowned. We just don't care anymore. Hockey, basketball, sorry, you're done. We don't care about you anymore. I mean, the ratings are down for both of those. This has been a great year for the NHL. It has. And no one is ever going to be the NFL. Maybe college football will one day be in the same pantheon as the NFL. But the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the WNBA, MLS, all these other things that are shooting for the goal of being the NFL, they're never going to reach it. So you have to run your own race. You have to be the best that you can be. All right? As cliche and as hokey as that sounds. You have to be, because if you're comparing yourself to the NFL, you're going to lose 10 times out of 10. And the only sport right now that's smashing previous records of viewership is the WNBA, which most people didn't even bother to care about up until a year ago. Right? So I don't know all the metrics that people want to use to make it. I mean, it was as compelling an NHL season as we have had in a while. The Four Nations helped that out tremendously. They were a huge boost. But this was a great fun. I mean, what the NBA, okay, we could talk about, well, we need the big brands. Okay, what NHL teams, what are the big brands in the NHL that we have to get in a Stanley Cup final to have the Stanley Cup final on in every television set in America? Like, you think the Rangers pulling? Yes, the Rangers ratings are going to be higher because they get New York. But that doesn't make it a better final. That doesn't make it more compelling television. There are just more people with the stake in it. And I think it's two different conversations. We had a team going for back-to-back titles, which is a big reason to watch. We have the game's best player on the other side. We have an entire country that is, like a Cubs or Red Sox story light. I mean, obviously, Canada hasn't had a Stanley Cup drought as long as the Red Sox and the Cubs had World Series droughts. But this country of Canada not having a Stanley Cup since 93, and Connor McDavid and who he is as a player and his legacy. And, oh, by the way, Leon Draisaitl's not that far behind him in the rankings of the best players in the world. And then you get, a team going for back-to-back. I mean, it was a great matchup. It was a great matchup. I don't know what matchup would have been better unless you're bringing your fandom into the conversation. And then you have the Four Nations, which is a primer for the Olympics. And I think the Olympics are going to be incredibly compelling and are going to be well received and well watched because we have this buildup of the Tkachuk brothers against Team Canada. But how do they bridge the gap? Right? If they're getting some momentum, television ratings aside, if they're getting momentum because they had a great regular season, they had the Four Nations, they had another memorable Stanley Cup final, how are they going to keep the momentum, keep in the news cycle. Well, how about the one thing that the NBA usually has that the NHL very rarely does? And that is the conversation about whether one of its best players is going to change teams. Connor McDavid, even with some time to cool down a little bit, let it marinate, perhaps that he lost another Stanley Cup, met with the Edmonton media and did not do much to assuage the feelings of anxiety in the city of Edmonton.
We're all in this together, trying to get it over that finish line. With that being said, ultimately, still need to do what's best for me and my family, and that's who you have to take care of first. But of course, there's unfinished business here. Yeah.
With that being said, that is a key phrase within that answer from Connor McDavid. Yes, I love playing in Edmonton. Yes, I love my teammates. Yes, I think we're capable of winning a cup. Yes, there's unfinished business, but I got to do what's best for me. I got to do what's best for my family. Now, there's some wiggle room in there that maybe his family doesn't want to leave Edmonton, right? Maybe it's best for his family that he just stays put. That is entirely possible here. And if I were a betting man, which I guess I am, if I were allowed to bet on such things, which I guess I could find a way to do it, I would probably say Connor McDavid remains in Edmonton. But it is not 100%. And the longer he goes without signing his contract extension, the more room there is to conceive of a world where Connor McDavid is not in an Oilers sweater. And that is great for the NHL. When is the last time that any NHL player and where they would end up rose to the level of this? Connor McDavid maybe not being in Edmonton. Forget the list of free agents. Connor McDavid's future is the biggest story of this NHL offseason. And that is a guy that is seriously contemplating his future. And he is sending a message to the Edmonton Oilers, as he should. You may be trying hard. You need to try harder. I love this organization, but I have done everything for this organization. It's time for that ratio to be balanced out a little bit. And the idea that, well, what other place could he go and be in a better spot? What people miss about these kind of conversations is you're taking Connor McDavid off of the Oilers and putting him on another team. The reason why the Oilers are the best place for Connor McDavid to win a Stanley Cup other than Florida is because he's on the team. So you have to remove him from the mix and then assess. In salary cap situations of these teams aside, okay, take Connor McDavid off the Edmonton Oilers. There is at least half a dozen teams that immediately come to my mind that would be better than Edmonton. What if Connor McDavid was on the Dallas Stars? You don't think he'd have a good chance of winning a title? What if he were on the Colorado Avalanche? You don't think that he'd have a better chance of winning a title? Like the idea that, Edmonton is the best play. Are you sure? Because last time I checked, a huge reason why Edmonton is where they are is because of Connor McDavid. What would you think Edmonton would be without Connor McDavid? If Leon Draisaitl was their best player, still a great player, would you pick them? Let's say Connor McDavid was out for the year with an injury. Would you take Edmonton to represent the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup? Absolutely, you would not. No chance. You would pick Dallas over him. You pick Colorado over him. You pick Vegas over him. And that's just in the West. So this idea that, well, what other place is going to give him a better chance? There are a lot of other places. Because that team would then have Connor McDavid, the best player in the world, on it. Here's another team. Go back to the first round of the playoffs and put Connor McDavid on the LA Kings. Who wins that series? That's LA would. It's an easy answer. Which is kind of part of the point here with Connor McDavid. What Edmonton can't do is fool themselves into thinking that they've made back-to-back Stanley Cup finals because of everyone not named Connor McDavid. So there are a lot of places Connor McDavid could go and get to the same point that he's been the last couple of years with Edmonton. Do not play that game. For Connor McDavid, it will be that. It will be, hey, I'm gonna look at the supporting cast around me in Edmonton. I'm gonna look at my horrendous blue line and my terrible goaltending room. And I'm going to look around the league and I'm going to see if there are places that are more fortified in those spots that I may be interested in going to. And when he says I'm going to do what's best for my family, guy's not from Edmonton. He's not from Edmonton. From another place in Canada that happens to have an NHL team. And happens to have an NHL team as if he wouldn't be viewed as a savior in any NHL city. But the city that he's from, if they got Connor McDavid, so this is right now, I think the most that this is Connor McDavid going, your move, Oilers. I'm under contract for next year. So you make all your plans with my money on the books and you see what you can do. And then after that, I'll look at it, I'll think about it, and I'll decide if this is ultimately the best place. If the improvements that I feel need to be made to this roster were made. And if that happens, Connor McDavid signs on the dotted line and he may be a lifelong Oiler. In many ways, to use a different sports phrase, the ball is in Edmonton's court. They have the hammer here. I think Connor McDavid, all things being equal, would like to stay in Edmonton. But right now, he's talking like a guy that doesn't see all things being equal. He sees a team on the other side of the bracket that this team cannot handle. Edmonton cannot beat the Florida Panthers. And I think he could look around the league and make the case that if he were on LA, Colorado, Dallas, Las Vegas, Toronto, Tampa, that he'd at least be able to get to the same point he's been with Edmonton and may be able to push one step further. But this is great. It is terrible for Oiler fans, but this is great for the NHL. The face of your league, the best player in the world, may not be in the same place for much longer. That's what sustains the NBA. It's not their games. It's us wondering where LeBron and Giannis are going and where Luka's going. It's good for the NHL. 719-247-1313. Where would Connor McDavid more likely win a Stanley Cup? Take your thoughts on that. More NHL news, more close to home, as other Central Division teams, including the Avs, have made some roster moves here as we begin the NHL offseason. After tonight's match against Lexington SC, which you can hear at 5 o'clock right here on Extra Sports 1300, the Switchbacks will be home on Wednesday night for 719 Community Night hosting San Antonio. If you would like to be there Wednesday night when the gates open at 6 so you could get your scarf giveaway is best giveaway. Be the 13th texter to text Switchbacks in your name to 719-247-1313, and you'll get a pair of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on San Antonio again Wednesday night at Widener Field. So it would appear that Jonathan Taves will not be joining Devon Taves, no relation, in an Avalanche sweater, as Taves has chosen to sign with his hometown Winnipeg Jets. And it was reported that he was trying to decide between Winnipeg and Colorado. And I got to say, most of the reasons line up to where Jonathan Taves should go to Winnipeg. One, it's a better story. Like, go home with the problems that Jonathan Taves has had in his career. Like, be home, man. Be around people that adore you. You'll be a conquering hero there. It's just a great story for him to come out of retirement or come off of his break or whatever technically it was and go play for the Jets, a team that could use somebody that knows how to navigate the NHL playoffs, because this Winnipeg team continues to fall flat on its face despite their regular season success. And from an Avalanche perspective, I get it. The cap savings, they would have saved enough to sign a whole new player if the Avalanche would have moved off of Charlie Coyle inside Taves. Taves only making a couple million. He's got a bunch of incentives tied in, as you might expect, given that he hasn't played hockey in quite a while. They would have been able to save money. The Avalanche would have, if they would have made that essentially that swap. My question is why? Okay, what are you going to get with that extra money? Because right now, the Avs are only one defenseman short of being able to take the ice tomorrow in an NHL game. And they signed Jason Polin and Matthew Steinberg. Remember Steinberg, the hit he put on Eric Cernak of the Tampa Bay Lightning back in October? Like, they could bring somebody up. Okay, so they're just missing one defenseman. They have both goalies locked up. They have 12 forwards. Yes, you're going to have to carry more, but the idea is, what are you using that money for? What are you going to get? And then you are incurring the risk. I mean, look at the deal that Taves signed with Winnipeg. It is incredibly incentive-laden because Winnipeg isn't even 100% sure they're going to get much out of Jonathan Taves. The Avalanche already have one of these guys. And I know the comeback that Gabriel Landeskog made had a lot of people believing, well, why not do it again with Taves? Look how good Gabriel Landeskog went. The Avs are in a cup or bust year, and you want them to willingly bring in another player like Gabriel Landeskog, who we still don't know how he's going to hold up over an 82-game season in 20-plus postseason games? You want to bring that guy in? I get Charlie Coyle makes, for his position, a lot of money. But I like him as a third center. Is it a bit of an overpay? Sure. Given his contract. He was given that contract by a benevolent franchise that was rewarding him for his many years of service. Doesn't have that track record with the Avalanche. I get that. But you would have to explain to me what the Avalanche could do. They bring back Mikko Rantanen with that extra couple of million they save? They going to get into the Connor McDavid sweepstakes with that couple extra million? Like, we're talking about a depth winger here. Just try to figure it out around Charlie Coyle. The spot that I'm in and I've been is I want to see this run back. I have questions. I want this group to come back next year, play a whole season. I want to see it all. Drury, Coyle, Natchez, Wedgwood, Blackwood, Landeskog. Like, I want to see all of it again. So I could really judge on whether all of this was ultimately worth it and ultimately the right call by Chris McFarland. To further muck that up by taking a flyer on Jonathan Taves because it may allow you to bring back Jonathan Drouin to play on your third line. Like, figure out another way. I mentioned Colton. I mentioned Wood. Moving those guys out. Maybe you look at one of your defensemen. Avs have some work to do, no doubt. But I don't think they're far from being in the worst position. And it's a risk that they don't need to take on. And I hope Jonathan Taves with the limit, not at the expense of the Avalanche, but I hope that it's a successful comeback for him because he was a great player and a key member of multiple Stanley Cup winning teams. Like, hope it works out. But the Avalanche, to me, are not in the business of taking this on just to save a few bucks. They already took on a pretty big risk trading one of their foundational pieces to save a few bucks. Don't need to do that again. And then you have the Stars. I mean, you really want to talk about hardship. So the Stars said goodbye to Mason Marchment. They traded him to Seattle so they could sign Matt Duchene. That's the right call. I would rather have Matt Duchene than Mason Marchment. Okay. But the Stars' work this offseason is far from done. This does not mean that they don't have to trade Jason Robertson. So we'll see what happens in Dallas. But you look at the Central Division. I mean, the Avs are in the best spot of anybody. Stars don't even have a head coach yet. Avs are in a good spot. Just need to tinker a little bit. Try to move off a contract. They don't need to be taking huge swings or incurring huge risks. Like, the team in the division that you worry most about has got a lot of problems. Dallas has got to figure out some stuff. Avs minor. Just minor things. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the latest on Shedeur Sanders and the bit of unfortunate news that he has made. And I think, troubling trend when it comes to Shedeur Sanders and who he is on camera and off of it. Welcome in. Glad to have you on this Friday, whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. You can also watch the show live on a daily basis via our social media platforms. The handle the same across the board at XTRA Sports 1300. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, our coverage of the Switchbacks and Lexington. An old friend and Speedy Williams will be met by the Switchbacks tonight. Again, coverage bottom of the hour, kickoff just after 5 o'clock. In the meantime, your thoughts, welcome at 719-247-1313. That number also handy to win yourself a pair of tickets to see the U.S. Senior Open next week at the Broadmoor. Was out yesterday and didn't miss much. Usually when I take a day off or I'm preempted for something, some major sports story breaks. And that was not the case yesterday, but a bit of news was that Shedeur Sanders had been ticketed for going 100 in a zone that does not have 100 as the posted speed limit. It's 165, yeah? And then Pro Football Talk came out and said, oh, that wasn't the first time. Just 2 weeks prior, he was pulled over for going 91. Now, given the list of things that professional athletes have done, we can keep it in its proper perspective, that this is not the most heinous or egregious thing that an NFL player or any professional athlete has ever done. We don't have to make Shedeur Sanders into an awful person for this. But we can point out, rightly, that there is no good reason. It is irresponsible. It is dangerous. And it is unbecoming of someone who wants to lead an NFL franchise to be driving that recklessly. It shows a lack of judgment, and it's against the law. So I think we could keep it in its proper perspective while still saying that there's definitely some criticism that is warranted here. This is a guy, mind you, that dropped down draft boards in a way we have never seen a prospect drop down draft boards. Because of the way he is when the cameras aren't around. I mean, that's really what it is, right? We hear things about the meetings that he had with teams. There's no video recording of it. All we see is Shedeur and Dion talking about it after the fact. And it's same here. No cameras were around. The YouTube videos weren't up of him driving over 100. When Shedeur Sanders has the cameras in front of him, he shows great leadership. He shows that he can play ball. And he shows that he's a good dude. And that last thing, the speeding infractions do not mean he is not a good guy. But you have to start to wonder, for a guy who is as well trained on living in the spotlight as Shedeur is, whether that's the thing that keeps him in, for lack of a better word, behaving. right? Because I was at those press conferences up in Boulder. And the ones I wasn't up there for, I've seen. Shedeur comes across great in a press conference. Takes accountability. Outside of one or two isolated incidents, never really says anything negative about the team around him. He's very good when the cameras are rolling. And I saw the video of him explaining, and he did what so many people his age do. They talk about, I've made mistakes and I'm not perfect and all that kind of stuff. It's very good when he knows that the cameras are rolling. But there are no cameras in his meetings with NFL teams. There were no cameras rolling when he was driving 91 and 100 down the street. And I think people in Cleveland, because that's now where he's employed, are right to worry a little bit if this guy has what is necessary to be the franchise quarterback of a franchise that so desperately needs one. As a football player, I've told you where I stand on Shedeur Sanders. I think he's going to start games this year, a significant amount of games this year. And I don't think it will take him too very long to establish himself as the best quarterback on the Browns roster. But there's so much more that goes into being a franchise quarterback. And not that everybody has to be the same. Everybody is different. But juxtapose what's going on with Shedeur Sanders and what has been reported about Shedeur Sanders with everything you know about Bo Nix. Right? Bo Nix is ball 24/7. Haven't heard a whisper about Bo Nix even having one too many at the bar and stumbling into an Uber, which would be not an offense of any kind. More power to Bo Nix. He's got the weight of a franchise on his shoulders. One night during the offseason, you're allowed to go out. Doesn't do that. Right? The story about Sean Payton having him empty the contents of his backpack and finding just things that are about enriching himself as a human being or a football player. And we can talk about Bo Nix's ability or what his ceiling is or whether he is capable as a football player of being truly a franchise quarterback. But everything he is about, how he goes about his business, what he is off the field, is everything you want in a franchise quarterback. Responsibility, work ethic, and he wants to be everything that is required of a franchise quarterback. I don't know that I can totally say that about Shedeur. This is irresponsible, reckless behavior. And he hopes to one day be the face of the Cleveland Browns franchise. I think some of this, you have to start looking back at the reporting that was going on during the combine. And I believe that some of this stuff is a little bit exaggerated. It wouldn't be unheard of for a journalist to get maybe some bad information. But there are instances now where you're hearing about Shador when the lights aren't on, when the cameras aren't on him, show some questionable judgment. And I don't expect him to get cut for this again. You know, there's another quarterback on the Browns roster that if we wanted to do this, and I don't think we necessarily should get into it, but if you want to do it, I would say that there's a quarterback with more egregious offenses than Shador Sanders speeding. And he's still gainfully employed. So this is not calling for Shador to get cut. This is not even saying that Shador is never going to become a franchise quarterback. But the impact in the immediate future is, even though I think he's this as a football player, like, we know that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry were not over the moon excited to draft him. That the call came down from above to draft Shador Sanders. Let's not forget that. And also, right now, he's in a full-blown quarterback battle. And any misstep, the Browns could cut him if they wanted to and wouldn't even bat an eye. Well, Dylan Gabriel's our rookie quarterback. Like, some people will be saying, man, you're really losing out on a guy that could be your best quarterback, and I would be one of those people saying it. But at this juncture, I'm talking about potential. I'm talking about what Shador can be, not what he is on June 20th. So his spot on the Cleveland Browns is anything but assured. And I can't imagine that people in Cleveland would take to the streets with pitchforks and torches in hand if Shador Sanders got cut because of an off-field transgression. I mean, he is under the microscope right now. Even if the cameras aren't rolling, even if the spotlight's not on him, he's under a microscope. Everything that he does could cost him, will be talked about. The bottom line is he's got to be better. And I'm not trying to sit here on my high horse. I've never, how many people, sometimes you can and say, you know what? I don't drive 100 in a 65. Can't relate to that. So this wasn't an honest mistake. This wasn't something that everyone can relate to. I'm not a Boy Scout, but I never done that. But to do this while you're in this, while everybody is scrutinizing everything, and you have a legitimate opportunity. You have a legitimate opportunity to take the reins of an NFL franchise in your first year in the league. It's there for him. But at the same time, on the flip side, his spot on the roster is far from guaranteed. And to go out in a 2-week span, especially after you got busted the first time, to do it again and to push it up 9 more miles an hour, it does make you wonder if we see a more polished, maybe different Shador Sanders when the cameras are on. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, your chance to win tickets to the U.S. Senior Open next week at the Broadmoor. Next week, the legends of golf converge on the Broadmoor for the 45th U.S. Senior Open. And if you would like to go and be there, I have a pair of tickets. What day am I at here? I think we're at Friday, if I'm not mistaken. I will double check that because that would be important. No, we're on to Saturday. Moving day at the Broadmoor. If you'd like to go, text the word golf and your name to 719-247-1313. The 13th texter to do that will get a pair of tickets to the U.S. Senior Open on Saturday. And if you do not win, you can always get your tickets at ussenioropen.com. So Connor McDavid, a little bit unsure about his future in Edmonton, which is music to hockey fans' ears because now the offseason became infinitely more compelling. This coming in from Albert on the text line, 719-247-1313. Your GM of the Avalanche, meaning me, McDavid with a 3-year extension straight up for Makar. Do you do it? Well, that is interesting. I don't, and I'll tell you why I don't. Because I still have Nathan MacKinnon. Who, not named Connor McDavid, is the best hockey player in the NHL. And then I also, with Cale Makar, have somebody who is the gold standard for defensemen in the NHL. And who is a bit of a unicorn at that position. So I would not. But is Connor McDavid a better player than Nathan MacKinnon? Yes. Is he a better player than Cale Makar? Yes. But if you're asking me to give up one, now, what if I could give up Brock Nelson and Gabriel Landeskog for Connor McDavid? Now we got a different conversation. But no, I don't think I would. And I know I threw out Colorado as a spot where Connor McDavid would have a better chance of winning a Stanley Cup than Edmonton if he were on the Avalanche. That presents the other part of this, and we're very early, so we don't need to get there quite yet. But how would this all go down, right? Would you, because Edmonton could not afford to lose Connor McDavid for nothing, right? They can't let him walk in free agency. So after this free agency period, if they meet with Connor McDavid and McDavid's like, I don't think you did enough to improve this team, and I think I'm going to test free agency. And I don't know that I'm coming back here. You have to trade him, which I know is going to bring back flashbacks for Edmonton Oilers fans, but you got to do it. You can't lose him for nothing. Right? We already saw that with one generational player going from Anaheim to Los Angeles. You can't do that. You have to get something in return. And what the asking price would be with Connor McDavid, I can't even wrap my head around it at this point. But you can't give up 8 players for one. You know, you're in a salary cap league. So there are teams still, I would stand by it, that he could go to that are better off, even if they would have to give up assets to acquire Connor McDavid. I still think they'd be in better shape. If I'm the Avs, I try to sign Connor McDavid in free agency, or I try to offer everybody not named Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. But there are other places. I saw the Spit and Chicklets guys about the only good thing Barstool does. Throw out Tampa. I mean, can you imagine that? The Florida Panthers, 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, winning 2 of them. And Tampa goes, oh, yeah, well, how about this? Would they be able to give up enough and still have enough to compete? I think we look at this Edmonton roster and you have to realize, not that great. Leon Draisaitl's very good. Evan Bouchard is a good defenseman. But I think Connor McDavid kind of makes everything happen there. You like this team exponentially better because of him. And then he would make wherever he went better. I mean, the easiest trade is that Toronto takes Austin Matthews and something else and flips it for Connor McDavid, brings him home to Toronto, changes up things a little bit with that Toronto team that still can't seem to get any further in the playoffs. But we'll see. I mean, a lot of eyes will be on Edmonton to see what they do, especially with the goaltender position. Avalanche had to act swiftly in order to make the moves that they did. Now everyone who needs goalie help is looking. Is Edmonton going to be able to address that position in a significant way? Find out, but this NHL offseason just got a lot more interesting. Connor McDavid, after the game, I understand it. He's in a bit of shock maybe over the whole thing. He's not going to be as eloquent or as well thought out, but he got to sleep on it. And he came back and he still gave you the sense that he is not 100% sold on his future in Edmonton. Sunday, we got the Game 7 between the Thunder and the Pacers. Thunder favored by 7.5. I think if I'm going to go with history as the precedent to say that Oklahoma City is going to win, I'll also go with it to say that I think that we'll be in for a good Game 7. I guess there's a bit of hope on that as well, that we get a compelling game. Probably take Indiana plus the points. We get a Game 7, and then after that, it's Caitlin Clark and baseball. That's what we got going on. And then we'll have NBA free agency and NHL. So it never stops. That'll do it for this portion of our broadcast day. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, Roland Vargas will join me, and we will bring you coverage of the Switchbacks in Lexington SC right here on Extra Sports 1300.